So, Melanie, should people start a business in 2026?
Wow, that's a loaded question. There's a whole lot to that. I guess I think it depends on what type of business you want to start. Are you doing like a massage parlor kind of thing where low cost startup, or are you going to do something crazy like start a chocolate factory or a bakery? Like, I think there's a lot to think about, and I think people vastly underestimate what it takes to do that. I know everyone gets tired of the grind and working for somebody else and making money for other people, and you just think, "Oh, I could be putting that money in my own pocket." You neglect to think about how much money is coming out of your pocket and how little is going into your pocket when you make that decision, so
Well, so today we're going to talk about the big surge that's happening in 2026, which there's crazy statistics out there that like up to 94% of people want to start their own business in 2026. I think that's kind of crazy. Maybe one in three people are actually going to try to start a business today. And so what Melanie and I thought we would do was we'd talk a little bit about our journeys, which are kind of typical about how you start a business. And Melanie, you started as a side hustle. Well, what is a side hustle?
I did. It was so a side hustle is something you do in your spare time from your regular paid job because you're either passionate about it or you see it as a means to an end for something else, for potentially growing and, having something of your own later down the road where you're not working for someone else and you get to make your own rules. That being said, you're a statistics person and you just spouted off a bunch of them about people wanting to turn their side hustle into a full-time business in 2026. I guess there's this huge surge of of naive and possibly stupid people who think that this is so much fun, you should start your own business. And that's not always the case. And I think it's different for everybody.
Well, I think a lot of people today are the statistics are all over the board about why people would want to start a business. I mean, you made a first statement. You said because people are crazy.
Mhm.
Because we live a small business every day. You live it to some degree more than me because I still do consulting, but you are in the middle of running a small business every day, and it's challenging. I told somebody when I left the billion-dollar company to run a small business that the number of problems were actually larger and the number of support staff to help you solve those problems was actually a lot smaller. So in many respects, it's really hard to run a small business. Let's talk a little bit about the decision tree though. Like how did you start? Like, how did you start your business?
So me personally, I come from a family of small business owners. I mean, it's kind of what I grew up in always. My grandparents had office supply stores. My mother had an office supply store. And it was just kind of one of those, that's what you did. You grew up, you put your big girl pants on and you became, a business owner of your own. And so I had worked for other small businesses. I've been in full service restaurant for over 30 years and just decided I wanted to do my own thing. And I did it a little backwards because I didn't have this grand vision of a business and a huge passion for something that I just really wanted to turn into my full-time job. I had an idea for my town because I come, from a small town, and I saw a need, and a need was there at the time was no good place to get great coffee and sit and hang out, kind of Central Perk style. I mean, I'm a 90s kid, so Friends was a big thing for me. And you could have, like baked goods and stuff in this casual atmosphere where you could hang out. We didn't really have that. And during my whole history of food service, one of my favorite jobs was working at Clear River because people were having dessert. So they were in a much better mood than people in a full service restaurant were. So I thought, hey, that was fun. Let's do that. So my best friend and I at the time, Missy, decided that, she would come on board and help me out. And I had a location first. Like I saw a spot that I thought would be perfect for an idea like that. And then I actually signed a lease, and then I had about 9 to 11 months to come up with a full business plan and decide what I was going to do, buy all the equipment, hire all the people, have a whole business model in mind that I wanted to aim for. So,
I know I've asked you this question before and I found it kind of humorous, but I think it's so typical of starting a small business. Tell us about your first sale. How much money did you make on your first sale?
so you talk about a side hustle. When I started baking, I was baking out of my own kitchen in my home. And I was making things and I was taking them to work at the restaurant I was working at the time. And I was giving it away to all the employees and getting them to tell me if they liked it or not. And it all started because my very, very favorite baked good ever were chocolate chip cookies that my grandmother would make me. And I was such a hard-headed little kid that she would make me say please before I could have a cookie. And I didn't like that. So I learned how to make my own cookies so I would never have to say please in order for her to make me a cookie. So I was making cookies at my house. I was taking them to work, and everyone just kept saying, I really think you can sell these. I think this is a good enough recipe. And then I thought I really enjoyed making them. What else would I enjoy making? And so I started making a whole bunch of different things at my house. I made funnel cakes. I made churros. I made pretzels. I made things like tres leches cake. And then I just kind of went back to a bunch of family recipes from my grandmother and my great grandmother and kind of just started making things that I had in my childhood. And they were good and people liked them and thought I could sell them. And so the very first sale that I made was for $0 because anybody who starts a business knows that people will come and ask for donations no matter what. And they will come to your home and knock on your door also if they know you have this side hustle and ask for a donation. And that's what I had. I had another friend who knew that I was thinking about doing this, and she asked me to donate 200 small pieces of cake for an event. And so I did that, and I just spent my own money, made that cake, donated that, and then turns out she gave me the wrong date for the event. So after I stayed up all night and made all these little cakes, we didn't need them until the week after that. So I drove around town giving away cakes with a little sticker that I ordered on Vistaprint with my logo on it for the business that I wanted to open in 9 months.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting today. It's probably never been as easy to start a business as it is today. There are so many businesses that you can start in either completely online, right? You could just start a design business or a print on demand business online, design stickers for Etsy. You can build things in your garage. You can get a 3D printer and start a 3D printer business. You can do all kinds of things today that are really, I would think, people merging hobby into business. And in fact, that probably tells my story more is that, I started making chocolate as a hobby. I thought it was something fun to do, and I sort of went deep in learning, and I figured out it was a lot of fun, and I met a lot of cool people, and I got encouraged. It was hard. I tend to be attracted to things that are difficult for some stupid reason, and it was just tough, and I enjoyed it. And when I hit it, it was like playing golf, right? I'm not a golfer, but when you actually hit the green, it was like a big victory. The very first time, and this is going to make everybody laugh, but the very first time that a bonbon came out of a mold, that was like magic to me, right? that had actually figured out how to temper chocolate. Now, it was ugly, and there were 24 chocolates in the mold, and I think only 10 of them came out, and the others stuck in the top of the mold. But I learned a lot from that experience, and it was a hobby. And then I figured out, wow, maybe, just maybe, people would pay me to make chocolate, and they would pay me enough to support my hobby. And so that's really how that business actually started. And I think a lot of people kind of go down that path. They don't go into the path thinking I'm going to feed my family with this business. They initially start thinking, can I actually just feed my hobby with the business? Can I buy more and more toys, basically, to support my hobby? And that was probably a little bit of my story.
That's a good story. And to say you go deep on something is an understatement because when I go back through all the things from back in the day when you first started making chocolate, you had all this crazy packaging and it was like custom stuff, and you had these inserts and you had all these things that you had done. So you looked like a pro from the very beginning in your hobby, as you do in most of your hobbies.
Well, I'm old right now, and I've been around a long time, but I will say that back in the day, right, doing this sort of thing, starting a side hustle into a business, it was an anomaly. And if you have to think back to the time when I was doing this, people did not work from home. If you worked from home, and not being sexist, you were usually a woman selling Tupperware. That's how old I am. It
Mhm.
just really was not the norm for people to work from home. Digital, there was dial up. The modem still beeped at you when you picked up the phone and other people were in the house. First of all, I think today people can realize that they can remote work. And I don't know if that was COVID that just forced our entire economy into this idea that you could do remote work. But I also think COVID shook people up. I think the fact that there were layoffs and that you could have a
Right.
virus, for instance, that could cause you to lose your job. I think it gave people a lot of anxiety about maybe making their own efforts,
I think it
right.
kinda did, but I think at the same time, I think that you're right. I think COVID kinda spurred something in people, and maybe not even so much just, "Oh, I don't like my job, I don't like what I do, I really wanna follow my passion." It was, "I've been doing this grind, this 9 to 5 for so long, I haven't had time to have a hobby or, think about what my passion might be." And I think people started that during COVID. I mean, look how many, like, sourdough bread bakeries came out of COVID because everybody had to learn how to do things, and then they thought, "You know what? I really like this. I really enjoy this." So think about when you very first started making chocolate, if that had happened during, COVID type situation, you would have really, really gone deep on that because you would have had the time and you would have had, the energy to put into it because you're not doing your 9 to 5, you're sitting on the couch and ordering your groceries online.
No, and I would think there were benefits probably to that time in my life that I don't get as much today, but there are so many advantages today. I mean, back when
Mm,
I first started making chocolate and learning this whole process of how to do it, there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't Instagram. All the books were generally written in German, so there just wasn't really an easy way to learn. Nobody has books on chocolate at the library, so you could get a few cookbooks, but for the most part, not very helpful. So what I did find though is that people around the country in our chocolate environment, they supported me. So when I reached out and talked to other chocolatiers, they were more than welcome to help me. And some of them took a chance on me. And I'll highlight one. There's a very famous chef called Ewald Notter, and Ewald is the best sugar artist in the world, hands down, best sugar artist. And people, if you don't know what that means, is those are the people that are on Food Network specials that are blowing up a fish with sugar. It looks like they're blowing glass, but they're actually blowing sugar, and then they airbrush it, and it just looks magical when you're done. Ewald's amazing, a Swiss trained pastry chef. He's just really amazing. And he had sort of seen that there was this idea that you could teach people more high level pastry techniques, particularly chocolate, some bread, but particularly sugar too. And so he started something called the Nodder School, which was in Florida, and it was absolutely geared toward pastry chefs. And I had met AOL somewhere, and I remember writing him an email. It was on AOL.com, and I said, "Hey, I'm a dermatologist. I have a chocolate shop in my pool house." Every possible element that you could put in an email that someone would say, "You're a nut job," right? I put in that email, and, to AOL's credit, he said, "Well, come try." And he said, "Oh, by the way, you're gonna need a chef coat. You're gonna need to wear black shoes. We're very European here, so you're gonna have black pants, and, you're gonna have to basically go through looking and acting like a chef because you're not a chef. You did not go to pastry school." And I remember being very nervous, and I went out and bought those clothes, and I felt like a fraud, complete fraud, because I was not a pastry chef. And I remember I flew out to Florida, and I showed up, and I found out a couple things. One, our industry is extremely friendly. So first of all, I was just welcomed in. Everybody thought I was a weirdo novelty, right? So they immediately welcomed me in. And secondly, I realized that in specialized things like you would learn in your kitchen or your garage, people don't know any more than you do. And so I fell right into it, and I enjoyed the learning, and it was very powerful, I'm really kind of blessed about that. Today, I do things on YouTube, and they're way more impersonal, and so I kinda wonder if today people are getting cheated a little bit in their learning of their side hustle because they don't get the experience that I got back then. Was a lot more work, was a lot harder to do, but, having that mentor, that person to kinda coach you and encourage you, it dramatically helped the quality of my product. It probably called bullshit a lot on stuff that I made.
Yeah, I can imagine because you probably didn't have a lot of people calling bullshit. I mean, if you're making chocolate in your pool house and giving it away, people are eating it and going, "Man, this is great."
Yeah, you hear a lot, Melanie and I talk about this all the time, that in it's true in business strategy too, that you can hear people talk about how good you are in your own echo chamber. And honestly, I tell people all the time, in a business meeting, you really want the people that are calling bullshit, because it's those contrarians that are going to challenge you to be better. It's going to be people saying, "Yeah, this is really good, but you could be better." I will say the Europeans are really good at that in general.
So am I. I think
You're
I must be European of descent of some sort. I think that's why we get along so great because you're used to having all these yes people around you, and Melanie is 100% the no person.
Yeah, and kind of in credit, Melanie can actually say no, that she doesn't like something before she actually physically puts it in her mouth. She can actually say no. She knows she's
Absolutely.
not gonna like it before she
Yeah,
even has tasted it, so that's
100%.
part of it. But, yeah, I think today, what do you think about AI? Do you think AI helps people, or does it scare people today in starting a business?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not the huge AI person. I mean, we're like black and white as far as this AI stuff goes. I just don't use it very much. I can say I have started to use it more recently. If I had had AI available, 10 years ago when I started my own business, I probably would have tooled around with it. I would have had it absolutely help me make a business plan, instead of just literally going back through my brain and trying to remember how much I thought, cost of goods were and how much sales were generated per hour and what my traffic flow needed to be, things like that. I think AI could probably help with that a little bit. I don't know that I would base starting a business on AI. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously I'm conflicted to some degree because, we run an AI company on the side. That's our side hustle, right? That's our side hustle is the AI company. It's interesting. When I look back at like starting that early chocolate business, there were certainly hurdles that I had to get through. And we always think back, well, you have to learn to make chocolate. That's true. But Melanie hinted on you do have to make chocolate, but the very first thing you realize is that once you've made chocolate, and let's just say that you get a pretty chocolate, that maybe 20% of them turn out and they're pretty chocolates. Then you got to figure out I got to put them in a package. And so then there is just no packaging, right? You have to figure that out. And you will find in our industry, packaging is the bane of our existence. We spend more time talking about packaging than we do about recipe development because packaging becomes so incredibly important. But I also think about where AI can be a big help. For one thing, like today, just generating labels. You can use software to help you generate a label. And you mentioned Vistaprint, but back in those days, you still had to design the Vistaprint label. Today, you can kind of AI do it for you, which is crazy. Canva is almost just all turnkey today, which is nobody had Canva back then, so that was kind
Right.
of an interesting thing. So I tell people today, when you're starting a business, what software do you need? As I always tell them, number one, QuickBooks. You need to start keeping track of your accounting like day one, because I will tell you personally, I've done a bunch of businesses. If you try to go back and reconstruct things, it's a challenge. So you're better off just kind of making the investment, starting keeping track day one. Plus, I think it keeps you honest about what you're spending on your side hustle. So if you're losing money, you might as well know kind of upfront. But I do think adding some AI tools is actually helpful today.
I know for you in your history with chocolate, it just kind of became life lined up for you where you retired from CEO world and decided, "Hey, I'm too young to actually retire. I want to do a chocolate shop because I've had this as a side hustle for a while." You know, was it hard to make that decision and did you have any idea how much it was going to cost?
Well, honestly, for me, the biggest barrier, uh, I think money is a barrier, and we'll talk about money later. We're going to talk about the actual cost of doing a business, which I think is people may be surprised when I answer the question.
100% they'll be
They're
surprised.
surprised. Um, the thing I would say that was the biggest challenge for me was, am I qualified to do it? Am I legit? I think a lot of people that are building things in the garage, and if you're a young entrepreneur building websites on Wix, are you good enough to go sell that to a client? Are you good enough to say, take money? I think a lot of people probably live in a world where, wow, people are going to pay me for this. That raises the bar. And I think for me personally, I knew that we could make beautiful chocolates. I knew we could. Could we do it on scale? Could we do 4,000 of them at a time? Could we do it at a rate at which, we needed to be able to run and function a business? You start to hire people, you get employees that depend on you, their families depend on you, their kids going to college depend on you. So a lot of stress starts to layer on top. Are you going down a fool's errand and just living in the dream that, well, everybody loves our chocolate? And I will say this about a small business. I think this is really true about food businesses. is that it's hard to test whether or not people are going to buy your product because all your friends are going to tell you this is amazing. And in reality, it may not be amazing. I'm going to shock you. It may not be amazing. So to some degree, I think you have to get really good confidence that you can deliver a product that people actually want to buy. And I think that's the big test. That was my big test, was whether or not we could make a product that people would actually want to buy, that would seek out the product to purchase. And I wasn't sure about that.
That's still the big test for you, though, because you ask me on a regular basis, do you think we can sell this? You come up with a recipe or you see something and you go, I know it tastes really good, but do you think we can sell it? Do you think people will buy it? Do you think then the next question, can you package this? Which the answer is typically no, because it's Melanie that you're asking, but we find a way and we package it.
Yeah. So, and I'm a big believer in the fact that you make products that people want. And, in fairness, at Hill Country Chocolate, we take, I'm not going to say heat, but we take criticism from some of the snobby chocolate world because we do artisanal bonbons. So they're very shiny, ultra reflective, too pretty to eat bonbons on one side. And then over here, we're making a pecan nut cluster and we're making toffee covered in chocolate. And so some people come to us and say, how do you do that? These are just juxtaposition products, right? They don't make sense together and all that. And honestly, we've always lived in the fact that chocolate shouldn't be snobby. And number two, you should be able to make whatever you want if people want to eat it. And for us, we want to make people happy. That's our business plan. They may not know that, but that's our business plan. So if people want toffee, then we want to give them toffee. A little bit of personal details about our business. We have Build-A-Box online. So people can go and build their own virtual box. And so Melanie, what do people put in the box?
People put the most random items in the box. I think you went through and you put almost every individual chocolate that we make on the Build-A-Box page, assuming it fits in the 9-piece box tray. And they'll load it up with, 6 caramels and 3 pieces of toffee. And they're paying a premium for that, which, they are getting to curate and get exactly what they wanted in their box. But, I don't know.
Well, I think the take-home message for us is that consumers want to curate their own box. They want choices. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
They want choices. And I think the other thing is we often don't know exactly what consumers want.
We never know.
We never know until you start testing it. But the one thing that we do, which is back to AI, is that I don't think you can start an AI small hospitality business.
Right.
In fact, it's got to be, the product has to be first, and then the customer has to be right up there with it, right? And you got to have them marry together that the customer wants to eat your product. And so it has to taste good. So if it tastes good, then we're kind of golden. And then, of course, our principles, the way we rationalize it in our brain is the fact that, we do make toffee in an artisanal way, and we wrap it in some of the world's best chocolate. So it's actually, we kind of keep those same culinary design principles across all of our products, even though they're actually done, a little bit different. So what advice would you give someone this year if they wanted to start a business in 2026?
Oh, wow. Well, like you said, first off, start with great bookkeeping skills. Another good one is Shoeboxed, because they will scan in all of your receipts for you, which could become very, very important later on down the road, making sure you have good bookkeeping. But if you're going to start a business, man, you really got to love every aspect of it. If you're going to be a business owner, you can't just enjoy, making cookies or making bonbons. You have to actually enjoy looking for and sourcing all of your ingredients and your paper goods and products. You have to enjoy learning everything there is to learn about the business as far as your customers go and what they're looking for. You have to enjoy feedback. You have to enjoy cleaning and making sure that the restrooms look nice and your store looks nice. You have to enjoy merchandising. You have to enjoy every single aspect of the business that, like you said, when you came from a much larger, corporate environment, there were 50 people doing these things. Now it's all just one. It's all you. And even if you hire a few extra people or you hire a couple of those tasks out, the majority of it still falls on you. And if you don't enjoy every single one of those aspects, they just keep making chocolate in your pool house and cookies in your kitchen and don't go full scale.
Well, that's a good place to stop, and a last couple of points here. I think half of all side hustles make, like, less than something like $1,000 a month, right? So,
Mhm.
a lot of people do side hustles, they don't make a lot of money, but 35% make a lot more than that in a side hustle. So, the difference for me has always been how committed you are to doing it, how dedicated you are, how hard you're going to work, and it's gonna be way more work than you ever thought. It doesn't cost a lot to get started doing a side hustle, so I think the numbers are gonna say it takes about 12 grand these days to start a business. That's always shocking. It seems like it should be a lot more. I don't think takes a lot of money to start a business. I think it takes a lot of money to grow a
To
business.
stay in
So I always
business?
tell people to stand. I always tell people that you can talk. One person can talk you into something, but 3,000 people can't talk you out of it. I think you can get enough money to get started in a business, but to really grow it, it's gonna take both commitment, and you are gonna have to have some capital to really grow it. But I would encourage you, if you're a young entrepreneur today and you like a side hustle, it's a great feeling. And of course, you're talking to two entrepreneurs here, so we're gonna feel pretty strong about it.
Yeah, we're either really smart or really stupid, one or the other.
I think we ask ourselves that every
And
day.
we
Well, thanks
do.
for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this edition to Being to Business podcast. It really helps us if you click subscribe and you click the like button. Apparently, there's this YouTube algorithm that if you hit the like button, it really helps us online. So until next week, we'll be back and we'll dive into another topic.